Welcome to Unfolding. I wanted to start things off with a quote from a book I just finished recently, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Mountains like these, and travelers in the mountains, and events that happen to come here are found not only in Zen literature, but in the tales of every major religion. The allegory of a physical mountain with a spiritual one that stands between each soul and its goal is an easy and natural one to make. Like those in the valley behind us, most people stand in sight of the spiritual mountains all their lives and never enter them, being content to listen to others who have been there and thus avoid the hardships. Some travel into the mountains accompanied by experienced guides who know the best and least dangerous routes by which they arrive at their destination. Still others, inexperienced and untrusting, attempt to make their own routes. Few of these are successful, but occasionally some, by sheer will and luck and grace, do make it. Once there, they become more aware than any of the others that there's no single or fixed number of routes. There are as many routes as there are individual souls. I think that passage perfectly encapsulates the journey that I've been on with religion and spirituality. And it's why I refrain from using words like God or Buddha or the universe, because they're loaded. People have all these expectations and preconceived notions of what those words mean. And I think spirituality is at its core a personal journey, because I think emotional development and spiritual development are actually the same thing. And if you look deep within and you look deep enough, you will find the divine in whatever form or shape it takes for you. I like Rick Rubin's frame of the source, framing it as a source for life, a source for ideas, a source for consciousness, sort of connective tissue that interweaves all living beings as a fundamental piece of the universe. That makes the most sense to me. But this is just the journey I've been on recently, because if I'm being honest, most of my life I was agnostic and atheist. And there was a period in my early teens where I was quite hardcore atheist. And I just was enamored by science, and I didn't even believe a divine was possible, let alone that it was real. I thought the universe was just one big puzzle, that if you just put the pieces together in the right way, you could figure it out. But over the past few years, I've just been realizing more and more that there's an element to the universe that is completely unknowable and mysterious. I mean, take the Big Bang. Like, that's science's best explanation for how the universe was created and how it started. But we don't know how it started. And everything else we know of has a cause. So, to me, it seems just as big a leap of faith to say the Big Bang was caused by nothing than it is to say it was caused by some sort of transcendental divine power of some kind, whether you want to call it God or the universe or source. I don't really see the difference. Atheism is a tricky one because it seems very logical. You can really step your way into it through science and through making logical conclusions about things and critical thinking. The issue is it has an inherent arrogance to it. The subtext of atheism is, I know what you're made of, universe. I know the answers. I know for certain that the universe is figure-outable. But I think true spirituality has an element of surrender to it, and just allowing yourself to know that there is some things you can't know, don't know, and may never know. And fully surrendering to that and trusting in that, I think, is pretty much what the essence of faith is. And for me, once I sort of slipped into this state of surrendering to a complete unknown and trusting in some sort of divine connective tissue, which I like to refer to as source, because it's less loaded. It brought me immense peace. A lot of the self-love escape philosophy stuff I was talking about recently in my writings, and finding this internal sense of unshakable confidence and internal alignment, peace and congruence, that was derived not only from a surrender and trust in myself and the process, but from a surrender and trust in the source, in something I can't explain that seems to be interwoven in all aspects of life. Surrendering to that, I think, in the same way that surrendering to the things you can't control gives you more agency, I think surrendering to the things you can't understand gives you more meaning, and it gives you more fulfillment, because it puts you into a place where you understand you are just a piece of a larger puzzle. And then you don't have to worry about the grand scheme of things, in the sense of there's something or someone else taking care of it. And you may not understand, people would refer to this as like God's plan or something. You may not understand the purpose behind things. You may not understand why things happen the way they do, but that's like a character in a book trying to understand why the author makes certain things happen. There's a disconnect because the author does not exist in the same reality as the characters in the book. In the same way, you can't, as a character in the book, figure out if the author exists or not, because that's like trying to see through the fifth dimension. It doesn't translate. And this is just a journey that I've been on over the past couple of years as I got deeper into philosophy, but really the past year and the past few months more recently, and more intensely when I started to feel this real intense internal alignment, peace, and congruence with myself, and just sort of truly surrendering and letting myself believe that there is something. A piece of this has an interesting story to it. So there's this guy at my gym. He's in his 80s. He's still kicking it strong. He is killing it. He always has these super colorful suits, where they'll be like all bright blue, and he has like bright blue shoes and bright blue pants and a bright blue blazer. And apparently he dyes them all himself. When I talked to him one day at the gym, and I chatted with him a bit, and he was telling me about his suits, because I was asking him about the colors. You know, he said he gets complimented on his suits all the time, and he was his face was lit up talking about it. You could tell there was just like this fun little thing he gets to do that sparks conversation with people. And he reaches into his pocket and he whispers into my ear, "God is real." And then he hands me this silver dollar. I'm in Canada, so this is not actually a currency that's in use anymore. But we used to use these. It's a Canadian silver dollar, out of commission now, but it's real silver. And he told me he won the lottery when he was younger, and he spent it all on silver dollars. And now when he meets people, he gives them a silver dollar. And he says, "You may not believe, but this will give you good luck. Can't hurt to keep it around, right?" And he says it, he says it in a way that you can tell he's talked to many different people about this, and most people just like immediately brush it off and tell him to go away. And those words stuck with me when he said them. Not because I was like, "Ooh, maybe it has good luck," but I was just thinking, yeah, I might as well just keep it around. So since that day, it's been about 4 months, 5 months. I could go back and check the exact day in the calendar because it's in my journal, but I've had this in my pocket. I take it with me everywhere. And to me, it isn't just a silver dollar. It's not a good luck token. It is a artifact, or I guess token is really the best word. It's a token that brings me to the present. It's a token that reminds me to be grateful. It's a token that brings me back to that internal sense of alignment and source that's tied into emotions and present moment. Because I think the enlightenment most people talk about in Buddhist traditions or even secular meditation, I think that is a true connection with source or the divine. I think that's why there seems to be this convergence between all these types of religious experiences or spiritual experiences or psychedelic experiences that all seem to converge on similar descriptions of oneness or ego dissolution or ideas of everything being connected in some way. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I think saying, oh, that's just a bunch of hallucinations that happen to have similar types of ideas across cultures, across centuries, and across different religions and belief systems, that just seems like a major leap of faith, honestly, and a much bigger leap of faith than to say, is it possible that there's some sort of mysterious, unknown part of reality that is being accessed here that we just don't know how to access in any other way? We don't know how to measure it scientifically. That seems like the more likely option to me. But this silver dollar, looking back, I can't deny how much my life has changed since I got this. I started making content beginning of this year, started the podcast at the beginning of this year. And while I have worked incredibly hard, I think it would be conceited to say that I was the arbiter of all the things that have happened to me. Obviously, some things have been lucky. Some things have been great opportunities. My mentorships, like, yeah, I set one of them up and I had to show up and I had to be in the interview process for them. But when the mentorship with Chris Griffin popped up, I wasn't looking for a mentorship with him. I was thinking about a mentorship with another guy, Benny, who's also great. But I was not thinking, I wasn't expecting it. And when it just popped up, I had only seen a few of his episodes. I hadn't watched a bunch of his podcasts, but from the little bit of his podcast that I had seen, I knew he was the type of person that I wanted to work with. He was the type of person that I knew was aligned with me and was on the same path, but just further along. And that's exactly what you want in a mentor. And when I saw he put on his story, hey, I'm taking in 5 new people to my mentorship program for his podcast, personal brand, community school with a mentorship thing on the side, something just felt right in me. And I immediately replied to it and then got into the interview process and then I got in. But it wasn't something I used my brain for. It was something I used my heart for. And I think that people who are very logical and hard pressing, I've talked about this a lot, they get lost easily because your brain can only take you so far. The intellect is a great tool, but the heart is the true compass for your life. That feeling of right and wrong, that intuition of just knowing when something feels right and something truly feels aligned. Your emotions are a signal, but your heart is the direction, if that makes any sense. And I think most of the time, what we try and do is we're so good at using our heads and so good at using our brains that we'll get a signal from our heart And if we want to do it, then we'll rationalize, oh, this is the logical reason why this reason makes sense. But the initial signal actually came from intuition and from the heart. It's that feeling in your gut. And then if we don't want to do something, but our gut is telling us to do it anyways, then there's a conflict. And what a lot of people will do is they will avoid their emotions, they'll distract themselves, or they'll rationalize or change their own minds about something and end up acting out of alignment. And that's, people sort of trick themselves into it. But it's like your gut was there telling you the whole time, like people who are in a horrible relationship for multiple years, like your gut was screaming at you the whole time to get out, but you just thought, no, I can make this work. I see the good in this person. And you were rationalizing your way out of it with your intellect. If you're in a job that you hate and you know you're going to quit eventually, but you stick with it because the pay is okay. And it's like, it's the region beta thing where your life is fine, but it's not horrible. Your gut is telling you, it's screaming at you to leave, but your life is so filled with noise and distractions and avoidance that you don't even hear it. And you let your intellect get you off the path. Your intellect thwarts you off the direction your heart is trying to push you towards. And I think your heart is trying to push you towards some sort of divine truth in terms of source. And your intellect is a tool that can help discern between things. It's very useful for getting things done in the material world, but it's not useful for anything internal. Anything internal needs to be done with your heart, because your mind is terrible at being objective, whereas your heart is a feeling of love. And when I say heart, it's like, it's not your actual physical heart. It's your soul. It's your consciousness. It's your essence, that piece of us that we can't explain, that science can't pinpoint. That's what I'm talking about. Your heart is oriented towards love. And I saw an episode of The Pocket recently, Chris Griffin's show with Grace and Hart, and I watched it twice because it was so insanely profound to me. Grayson said, the more he lives, the more he realizes that there only really seems to be two emotions, love and fear. And I think this idea fits perfectly into everything I've been talking about. He says love is truth and fear is an illusion. And to tie this into everything I've been talking about even deeper, I think not only is love truth, love is the divine. Love brings you closer to source or God. And fear is an illusion that pulls you further away. If you wanted to get really like Christian and biblical, you could say fear is like satanic or something. And that love is a virtue and sin. But again, I don't like those terms because they're so loaded. People have all these judgments and expectations about what they mean. And that's one of the reasons I dislike organized religion in the most places, because it provides a structure of hierarchy for what I believe should be an internal personal journey. And those two things can work together, but rarely do, I find. The interesting thing with all this spirituality stuff is that once you start talking about it, people come out of the woodwork telling you their experiences. So you get an interesting perspective on how different people's paths have been forged. You get people who are Christians, you get people who have done a lot of meditation, who are pretty much secular, but have reached this spiritual state themselves. You get sort of like these, the typical like spiritual type people when you think of like white people with dreadlocks and like tattoos of trees and stuff on them, and they're talking about crystals and astrology. The stereotypical type of spiritual person, like all these different types of people begin to open up to you because they can tell you're getting close to something real. And those are the people that I think are the real ones. They're the real religious people, the real Christians, the real spiritual people, when they can connect to you from their own personal experience and tell you about certain things that they've had and how it has informed their intuition, their sense of self, their heart, their beliefs. But I think a majority of the people in religion, this is one of the key reasons I don't like it, is because a lot of Christians are performative. a lot of Muslims are performative. I think a lot of people in religions have just grown up in them. And Richard Dawkins makes a very fair point in his part of his argument for atheism is that your religion is pretty much geographically determined almost entirely. So if you grow up in like North America, you're probably going to be Christian. If you grow up in the Middle East, you're probably going to be Muslim. If you grow up in Israel, you're probably going to be Jewish. Like, it seems to almost be hereditary, but that's because it's based on how you're raised, largely. The thing is, I think there's something real being accessed. And I think all religions get a piece of it right. I think these different names like God and Buddha and Allah are just labels for what is this connective tissue, this divine, this source. But I don't think any of them is fully correct. I don't think they can be, because the nature of spirituality itself is that it is your personal interpretation of a personal experience that you're accessing something real. And that's what I think the issue is when this stuff breaks down, is that it's all based on interpretation, because it is by nature a personal journey. So it is something you have to go through yourself to fully determine and understand the truth. And the thing is, like, I haven't had any sort of religious or spiritual experience. I just have this sort of like permeating sense of trust and surrender, because I don't see how there could be another way. So I've kind of logically worked my way into this, which is quite ironic. But love and fear. Love brings you closer. Fear pushes you further away. And a great question to ask yourself in any moment is, am I feeling love or am I feeling fear? Because that will probably help delineate whether you're acting in alignment with who you want to be or shying further away from who you actually want to be. Because that's how you maximize your potential. And that's how you reach a state of fulfillment in your life, is by trying to live each moment in love and peace and joy, and not fear or shame or avoidance. You bring the shame to light and it evaporates. It only exists in darkness, because shame is a version of fear. And the thing is, there's no end to it. The deeper you look within yourself, the deeper you sit in silence, the deeper you feel your emotions and feel this permeating connection with the source and with the present moment, the more, at least I've started to realize, that love is infinite. It is truth. It is perhaps accessing a divine reality, but it is infinite. This is why a joy shared is a joy doubled and a burden shared is a burden halved. Because when you share a piece of joy, which is in essence a piece of love, since love is infinite, there's no zero sum. I give something, and therefore I'm losing something. When I give you love, when I give you peace, when I give you joy, I still have that sense of love, peace, and joy. It's just that now you have it too. It's a surplus effect. So these are just some of the thoughts I've been thinking about for a long time. And I just wanted to put them out there because someone might be going through a similar thing in their own spiritual journey, especially if they're very science-oriented, very self-improvement, productivity-based, trying to optimize their life. All of those things live up in your head. And self-improvement is great. I love self-improvement, but only as a means to an end to realize my own potential. And potential isn't just about organizing your calendar and maximizing your time and getting a better physique and developing skills. It's about becoming your truest ideal self. And that involves your emotions, and that involves your heart and your soul. And that is not something you can optimize your way into. That is not something you can figure out. That is not something that you can really develop in any other way other than looking within, sitting in silence, feeling your emotions to their full depth, embracing them, even the difficult ones, and letting that guide you towards love and truth and divinity. That is how your entire soul advances. That is what potential is, at least in the sense that I see it. And I think this ties right into dating as well. It's because everyone's trying to find the right person, right? Everyone's trying to find the perfect person. Everyone's trying to find a soulmate. And most people are stuck up in their head. But even the people who access their heart and live in alignment have a rough time with it. But I think that's what you need to lean into more. There's a quote I heard recently that the best way to find your soulmate is to find your soul. And I don't think I can see another way. If you truly know yourself to a depth that no one else can, that is how you develop true, authentic charisma, because you know that nothing anyone says or does could ever take away from your internal sense of self-assured confidence in who you are and alignment with your path. You truly become unshakable and unstoppable at that point because in some sense you are, because you know yourself to a state where you know that no one else could know deeper. You know that there isn't something that you aren't aware of that could be used against you because you already know about it. So your insecurities and your insufficiencies have no power over you anymore because you've already confronted them. Someone can't use it against you to weakness because you fully accepted and welcomed it within yourself. And you've realized it's not a weakness, it's a strength. So you can't be ashamed of anything because you realize that is what makes me who I am today. And that is what will attract the right type of person you're looking for. I truly believe. Because if you are fully aligned and confident and at peace with yourself and you truly know yourself, you aren't going to put up with anything that isn't what you're looking for and what you want. If someone's trying to waste your time or playing games, you're gone. You don't need external validation from any part of the material world, let alone one person. So this really slips you into that abundance mindset people talk about. Is that like it's take it or leave it? Like I still want to connect with people and I still want to strive for things in the material world and I still have desires. The thing is, I know that even if I don't get those things, I'll still be okay. So there's not this need to try to prove anything. There's not this need that, oh, I need to find somebody because then I can finally love and accept myself. It's like, no, I love and accept myself now. Finding someone's just a bonus. And I've heard this advice all the time when I was younger. And I just found it so hard to swallow. That's because it is. It is hard to swallow. It's meant to be that way. Love and truth is the difficult path. It's not easy. That's the whole point. The challenge is what makes it significant. The challenge is what makes it meaningful. That's why it's desirable in the first place. You can still have desires without being wrapped up in them. You can still want nice things without needing nice things. You can still want connection with people without needing connection from people to feel like you're enough or feel like you're anything. The fact that this path is so difficult and that trusting your intuition and leaning into love and truth is so hard is exactly why most people will never reach that state. As the passage in the book says, many never even climb the mountain. They go their whole lives standing beside it and just looking up, wondering what it's going to be like. And that to me is a tragedy. And one of my greatest missions with podcasts and with content is to help spark as many people as I can into taking that first step towards climbing the mountain. Where the mountain isn't just a spiritual metaphor, but it's a metaphor for, as I was talking about, realizing your potential in the truest sense of not just optimizing your life and making material things better, but self-actualizing your life, knowing yourself to a sense of completeness. And I'm not saying I know myself to a sense of completeness. Obviously, I don't. I'm just a 21-year-old kid. I haven't had some massive breakthrough or anything. These are just a bunch of ideas and patterns I've noticed across philosophy and my own personal experience that I think aligns too well to just be a coincidence and feels true and feels right and feels correct. But many people won't even take that first step because it is so difficult. That first step up the mountain is truly hard because you have to look in the mirror and realize that many of the choices that you've made have brought you to where you are, and you don't like where you are right now, which means you didn't make good choices, which means we're kind of wasting a lot of your time. But the only way to fix that is to start making the right choices now. The only way to get onto the right path is to change your direction. How do you expect to be successful, not just materially, but spiritually? How do you expect to find your fulfillment and happiness and potential? How do you expect to find peace if you aren't willing to work for it? If you aren't willing to change aspects about your life? If you aren't willing to swallow hard pills and feel negative emotions? Because emotions are true. And that's another piece of this that I think ties into this quite well, which is the morality of emotions and how they actually fit into a framework that you can use ethically. Because for a while I've been torn on whether morality was objective or relative, because I can't see a way around emotivism. Because it doesn't make sense to say that moral statements are true or false to me. That seems nonsensical. Like, I think murder is wrong is an opinion. That's not a true or false statement. So trying to develop a moral framework around such moral statements seems like trying to build a castle on quicksand. It doesn't make any sense because emotions are true or false. So therefore, any objective moral framework is faulty, and then you just devolve into relativism, where it, all of your morality is just based off of how you feel, and whatever, it's all subjective, bro. And yeah, murder's wrong for me, but not for you. And that's the issue I've had with emotivism for so long, is because it felt like an inevitable endpoint for me to get to, but I didn't see a way around it. Until I started thinking about and getting deeper into all this spirituality stuff and realizing that if emotions are true and love is truth and fear is illusion, then emotivism is correct, but it's also an objective framework for morality. Because then anything that leans you towards love and truth is the right thing to do. And I think that's why it feels like it's the right thing to do. And anything that is out of fear or avoidance is an illusion and therefore the wrong thing to do, because it will bring you further away from divine truth of the source. Whereas love and truth bring you closer. That's why morality can fit into this piece so well, is because we have a felt sense of intuition about it, barring exceptions like psychopaths. And it ties exactly into the idea that emotions are signals. Emotions are signaling something to you. And whether it's a fear response or a love response, it's useful information. The key is to feel it and let it guide you towards love and truth, and see the fear for what it is instead of believing every thought that pops into your head. Because that's what most people do, and that's what meditation and mindfulness is best for, is creating that gap between you and your thoughts and realizing you don't need to believe everything that crosses your mind, because a lot of it just kind of flows in and out. And that's why I love the metaphor and the idea of the source from Rick Rubin, is because it has this idea that there's this massive river of things and ideas and perceptions and feelings and little imaginations that spur into your head and imagery and all these things that seem to be in a stream of consciousness that we tap into sometimes when we enter flow state. All of these little bits and pieces are coming from somewhere, because they're not coming from you. At least we don't know that they are. Science hasn't found any explanation for consciousness or where thoughts arise in the brain. We know they're sort of like neurochemical signals, but we have no idea where they come from. They all come from somewhere. So that's why the source is such a great name for it, because there's a flow of thoughts and emotions and perceptions and ideas. And sometimes you grab onto a piece. Sometimes it flows through you and you enter a state of passion and focus where time melts away and you're in that complete stream of consciousness where you're just talking, like right now, where I'm just talking with complete certainty of exactly what the next word is going to be. And I almost feel taken over by what I'm saying. Or you're working on a computer and you're editing a video. This is just a personal example. And time is melting away because you're tweaking this, you're watching the timing of that, you're timing something to the music, you're changing the cut of this, you're watching it back and like, oh yeah, that's good. And just that process, you get so involved and deep into it that you lose sense of time. Like when you lose sense of time, I think that is when you are in the stream of consciousness, and it's when you're tapping into source in some way. And I think that is the best analogy for it, because as you develop some deeper self-awareness, and as I've increased my mindfulness gap through meditation and journaling, I've realized that thoughts and feelings just come and go. But the feelings are different because they have significance. They can bring you closer or further away from love and truth. Whereas the thoughts can be useful, but they can also be completely useless. And that's why this idea of the intellect being a tool in the material world and the heart being a compass for the internal world is such a powerful one, because it allows you to separate those two. Like, is this a thought or is this a feeling? Something's arising within me. I'm tapping into a stream of the source somehow. If it's a thought, is it useful? Can I do something with this? If it isn't, I don't need to believe it. I don't need to keep it in my head. I can just let it go away because it's useless to me. If it is useful, then I can write it down. I can remember it. I can do something with it. I can act on it. That can be a source. That's what inspiration is. When you tap into the source and that inspiration propels you in that moment. And if it's a feeling, feel it. Sit with it. You can't think your way out of a feeling problem, so don't try to. At least in my experience, that's not how it works. You feel your way through the emotion and you go, is there a fear underneath this? Is there something I'm avoiding that's causing me to feel this way? Is there a piece that this thing is trying to tell me that I don't want to feel? Because usually if an emotion isn't positive, there is, for me, when I sit with myself or when I journal about it or anything, there's a fear somewhere underneath it. There's a fear of insecurity. There's a fear of not being enough. There's a fear of people leaving. There's a fear of insignificance. And those are all tied to the core of most negative emotions. And then the other negative emotions sprout out from that. And sometimes the layers can be so complex that it takes a while to peel back the onion, so to speak, to figure out what the core is. But if you just expect that the core is going to be fear, then you can say, okay, what fear is underneath this thing that's making me feel this way? And why am I trying to avoid it? Because anytime you try to avoid something within yourself, you're acting under illusion. And then you're pushing yourself further away from truth and love. I hope that anything I've said today has been useful to you. And if something really jumped out at you or really connected with you or resonated on a deep level, that's a signal of source and love and truth. And I want you to tell me about it. Reach out in the comments, send me a DM. If you feel that spark of connection in some way, I would love for you to act on it. And I hope wherever you are in your journey that you're doing good. It's beautiful out here today. And I've really enjoyed this solo podcast. It's been kind of intimate, kind of quite personal, but also just more relaxed and more chilled. Starting off with that one quote and then just sort of letting my mind wander and work through my experiences and talk about what I've been through. So, thank you for watching or listening, whatever platform you're on. And hope you're doing good. See you in the next one.